This January Blues video is here to provide information, not advice. If you are experiencing any issues surrounding mental health and require support, please visit the NHS website or reach out to the Money Charity and Rethink Mental Illness UK. Nailed it.
Nailed it first time.
Let's get straight into it. January Blues. Okay, so it sounds like a song, January Blues, right?
It does.
And it is a fairly new diagnosis, but it's also known as seasonal affective disorder. I'm going to break down a little bit of history here so that people kind of get a little idea of what this is. So this has been spoken about for hundreds of years, and I think one of the first documented experiences by a psychiatrist in the 19th century, his name is Jean-Estienne Esquirol. Sorry about that pronunciation. Struggle was real. He actually documented his experiences about seasonal changes and his mood. So he was documenting it through his traveling and his experiences and traveling to different countries and noticing how his mood would change. But it wasn't until like 1980s where the researchers at the National Institute of Mental Health made it like an official diagnosis. So what is it, right? That's the big question. So many people go through, right? Like many people go through short periods of time where they feel like different with their moods, and sometimes that is connected with the winter months. There is some scientific research that goes into showing you how kind of vitamin D in the sun that affects how your mood goes. And symptoms include feeling depressed most of the day, sometimes losing interest in stuff that you've done all the time, changes in appetite and weight, problems with sleep. Those are just a few of the symptoms of seasonal depression. And probably the first question to ask is, have you ever experienced any of that yourself?
I don't think I've necessarily experienced that in a whole, like enough to say, I could have been diagnosed with that. But I've definitely experienced those symptoms in some way or form. I think the whole thing about when it gets dark outside, you wake up, it's dark, you haven't even finished a work day and it's dark, like that has such a massive impact. And that's one thing I noticed most about myself, like when it's dark and I'm just like, this is not okay. That probably has the biggest impact to me. And I think especially where we're at the moment, like the last lockdown we had, it was really sunny and really nice, and obviously we were inside, but like you woke up, it was light, you're going to sleep, it was light. So I think the difference in lightness has a massive impact on me personally. I don't know how you feel about that.
No, I agree. I think it almost feels like you need to switch off earlier and you can't. It's in the middle of the day, it gets dark like almost like 3, 4, and you're kind of like, oh, I feel like I should be like slowing down, but the rest of the day is still there. So I think
yeah. And I think in our like modern society, we're not built up, especially in the UK. Like in the UK, we do have seasons. Like we have 4 clear seasons pretty much, but our work life and general life isn't actually set up to work around those seasons. It's the same throughout the whole year. So like you say, you feel like, you finish work, you have your dinner and you're like, it's like 6, you're like, I need to be going to bed. I just kind of curl up. I don't want to do anything. And I don't think our systems are set up to allow us to change with the seasons. And that's where I think the friction comes in. And that's why when it is colder and it is darker, you feel those feelings, because it has such an impact, because you're trying to live the same life but in a completely different environment. And it's confusing.
Right. Do you do anything to help you, like with that kind of switching off and also staying on sometimes? Do you do anything with that?
Most of what I do is like, it's a lot of like mindset stuff of like telling myself it is okay. I don't need to be as productive. Like for me, a lot of where the pressure comes from is not being able to get work done, because obviously I have a full-time job and then I do all of this stuff on the side as a side hustle, trying to make it become my main job. So you're working in the evenings, you're working at the weekends, but I have to kind of like remind myself, it's okay if you really do need to stop and sit down or go to bed early or whatever it is. Like the more pressure you put on yourself, the worse it gets, I think.
Right.
So it's kind of like scaling back. And if I'm feeling like in a certain way on a certain day, there's different things like I'll try not to go on my phone. because I noticed that has a massive impact. We all know, like, the topic about social media and having access to so much stuff, and you know that you can go on Instagram and it could be dark and gross outside, but you're going to see somebody on a beach in Bali and it's not cute. Like, it makes you feel worse.
Or Dubai, because for some reason everyone's in Dubai at the moment.
Everybody's in Dubai at the moment. So.
Yeah, I think also for me, actually, what I've been doing is one of my colleagues goes out for a morning run and a morning walk, and normally that would suit me better because, you know, it's just kind of gears you up to getting ready for work. But for me, even if it's dark, I still at least spend some time after work having just maybe a walk around the block, because I think it helps then to kind of switch off what you're doing. I think another problem we're facing now is we're dealing with living in a pandemic, you know, I want to say post-COVID, but it's not over.
Not over. We're still in the midst of it.
We're still in the midst of it. So I think in this kind of time, it's so important to find that space where you use your personal life, because this is my bedroom, this is the background, and it's also now my workspace, so it's not even my chill zone. So you need to find ways where you can kind of fit that in. And I think that's what I've personally been doing.
And I think having routine is really good. Like, I've got into this really nice morning routine where I wake up a certain amount of time before I go to work, usually about an hour, and I'll go for a walk, I'll write, I'll read, even just a little bit, just to kind of before you jump straight into your work day. But obviously there's a lot of people who aren't working at the moment, so their routine is even more scattered, which makes it harder. And if you are living with flatmates or even with family, but you're in a smaller space, all the things become a bit of everything. Like you say, like, your bedroom is your workspace, but you also work out there, and it's hard to have those like different chunks of your day. And I think because we're on this lockdown, everything's just rolling into one.
Right.
So I think at the moment, because it's post-Christmas, mid-pandemic, and in the middle of winter, it's like a triple whammy for feeling all over the shop. And I'm sure loads of people will kind of resonate with those feelings in some way or another. And I think the best thing you can do for yourself is like finding a routine, even if it's just little things that make you happy. Because I know that even if the only time I won't go out for a walk is if it's like snowing and it's dark and it's horrible. If it's just a little bit drizzly, I'll just go, you know what, put a hat on, take a brolly. Because I think the fresh air and stuff does really help.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think you also mentioned, you know, we've just dealt with Christmas, which is a great season. It's, you know, families getting together. Unfortunately, that's not been able to happen for a lot of people. But then also the financial pressures around that. And I think now with all that's going on, there's so many factors that are affecting people's mental health. How do you think people are dealing with the financial side of things? How do you think the pressure is now built up post-Christmas, in a COVID economy going awry, and, you know, how do you think people are dealing with that?
I think on a whole there is this sense of like, it's hard because we've been in this so long. It's been nearly a year, like, that we've been in and out of lockdowns, and, you know, about a year that all of this sort of started, which is a long time when everything is so uncertain. And
Right.
The problem with money is that, as we know, like, people don't talk about it a lot. And if you're having some issues, it usually kind of, you're either handling it or you might not be coping with it very well. But the fact that we've got this added on top, there is so many more people struggling because of either a loss of income or an increase in, you know, poor mental health, things like that. I think that the general feeling is that kind of, there's a lot of worry, there's a lot of financial worries, no matter where you're at, no matter whether you are unemployed or whether you are employed, because there's worries about losing a job. There's so many different levels to it. And I actually read something the other day that said the difference about this crisis in the economy that we're going through at the moment is that it's actually affecting everywhere. It's not like an isolated area or an isolated industry. It's affecting all of us. And
Right.
there's more, I think, there was a debt charity that said since the start of COVID, they've had spoken to about 4.6 million households, and there's about 6 billion pounds worth of like consumer debt since the pandemic. And
Right.
It's like crazy high numbers. No, as I'm saying, I think it's affecting so many more people than it would just on a normal basis, and especially with it
Exactly.
being after Christmas.
Exactly, and I think you mentioned debt, and I think I read another stat, pulling out the stats today. Uh, the Mental Health Policy Institute said almost half, like 46% of people in debt also have a mental health problem, and then 86% have said that it's made their mental health worse. So it's now, you know, we recently heard in the news with the tighter guidelines around you know, buy now pay later schemes. There's a lot that needs to happen, because the whole situation for everyone, like you said, whether they're in a job or not, has changed, and it's hard to adapt to that.
Yeah, and I think the problem is as well is like there's so many different like factors to it, because you've got the factor of your job or where you get an income, and so many different industries have been affected in so many ways. And I think people who were probably just getting by or were financially stable before, they're also now struggling. So you've got the people who were struggling before struggling even more, plus the people who were kind of in the middle were doing okay but have had changes. And you know, it's been going on for a really long time. And whilst there's different schemes, there's people falling through the net, like different self-employed people and things like that. And I think that it's hard to talk about, because you kind of feel everybody's going through the same thing. So you're kind of like, I think a lot of people who I've spoken to on Instagram or different clients, they felt like they can't complain as much because so many other people are going through the same thing. So it's kind of like, what makes them different? But that doesn't mean that you know, your problems aren't as bad, or that they you know, right, you should ignore them. It's just, yeah, I think it's one of those things. And especially, like I say, being post Christmas, the pressures on everybody. Like, we all thought, we were like, yeah, Christmas, you know, we're going to get that 5-day period, which we didn't get. And then I think that caused people, like, that was a trigger for spending more money. And like you say, with buy now pay later schemes, being able to just go, fine, I'll sort it out another point. And now we've come over into the new year with more debt, more financial worries, plus crap weather. So
at Claro, we are super passionate about understanding the relationship between money and mental health, and that's why we're doing a survey which we'd love for you to get involved with. To find out more, check out the links in the description, or head over to our socials at Claro_money. A special thanks to Laura for taking part in this video, and we have amazing content coming your way soon, so please do subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification. Thank you.